everyone. It's me. There might have been some confusion as to whether or not I was actually streaming live today. I am streaming live today. It is next week that I will not be streaming. So this upcoming Thursday and Sunday, there will be no live streams. I am going on a trip, and I might... Yeah, no, there will be no live streams. I'm sorry. But after that, we will pick it back up again. But yes, there's a stream happening today. So, yay! Welcome, welcome. Boy, it's been... Well, I mean, I'm moving to the Northwest. Hopefully the Seattle-Tacoma area, but at this point, I'll take what I can get. So it's exciting and nerve-wracking and emotional and stressful, but change is good. It's important. I'm not ready to put down roots yet. It's not that I got no roots, so my home is never on the ground, as Lord so rightly says. In her case, I'm sure. It's not in my case. I have roots I do want to put down. I just don't know if they're here, and I'm not willing to risk missing out on something great. I just don't want to settle down yet. And there's an opportunity and I'm going to take it, and we'll see. Hopefully I don't ruin everything. But let's get into the fun stuff, why we're actually here. We're here to read Percy Jackson and to read books. So, what happened last time? Percy Jackson, our hero, has just recently found out that he is a demigod. His mother, who unfortunately he saw killed by a minotaur, who he then killed, which was an intense chapter. His mother is no longer around, and he does not know which deity is the father. But there's some definite water themes happening, so one wonders if it might be the Brocian god himself, god of the Brocian, Brosidon. I'm very relaxed right now. So, he is at a Camp HalfBlood. Percy Jackson is at Camp HalfBlood, which is a camp where all of the other demigods go because the ancient Greek monsters come and fight and kill them because that's what they're meant to do. So this camp is a safe place for them, and not every demigod survives, and most importantly, not every demigod gets claimed by the parental figure. So Hermes claims them all. God love him. That's so cool. I love that Hermes claims all of the unknown travelers. It's a beautiful detail. Rick Riordan does... So far, I am utterly impressed with what Rick Riordan is doing with the mythology, and I'm quite charmed. And it's a delightful surprise. So yeah, the last couple chapters has just been Percy getting to know the camp. We met Annabeth. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. What is her name? Annabeth. It is Annabeth, not Annabelle. Annabeth, who is the daughter of Athena. She's been here since since she was 7. Oh, well, let the doggies run, Amanda. I'm glad you gave them time to run. In fact, I just had to do like a quick clean care of my kitten before I ran here. I had to like do the litter box and make sure I had food and water so he wouldn't come and his little tail pop up on the stream. But I'm glad you could make it, and I'm sorry if you were confused that I wasn't like streaming today, because it's next week that I'm gonna be off. Yeah, so I was just doing a bit of a sort of rambling summary of what was going on in Percy Jackson, about how the last few chapters was an introduction to Camp HalfBlood and the characters there. He met the bully, a girl, a daughter of Ares named Clarice, and we've sort of set up the villain, the Slytherins, if you will. Like, these are the bad guys, the bullies. Oh dear, an excessive heat warning. Oh, summer sucks. I like winter. I like bright colors, but I like the cold. Well, I like warming up. I don't like cooling down, is what it actually is. Anyway, we're 5 minutes in, and I think everyone in the audience is saying, yes, get on with it. So, Chapter 8. We capture a flag. The next few days, I settled into a routine that felt almost normal, if you don't count the fact that I was getting lessons from satyrs, nymphs, and a centaur. Each morning, I took ancient Greek from Annabeth, and we talked about the gods and goddesses in the present tense, which was kind of weird. I discovered Annabeth was right about my dyslexia. Ancient Greek wasn't that hard for me to read, at least no harder than English. After a couple of mornings, I could stumble through a few lines of Homer without too much headache. The rest of the day, I'd rotate through outdoor activities, looking for something I was good at. Chiron tried to teach me archery, but we found out pretty quick I wasn't any good with a bow and arrow. He didn't complain, even when he had to de-snag a stray arrow out of his tail. Foot racing? No good either. The wood nymph instructors left me in the dust. They told me not to worry about it. They'd had centuries of practicing running away from lovesick gods. But still, it was a little humiliating to be slower than a tree. Oh, poor Percy. And wrestling? Forget it. Every time I got on the mat, Clarice would pulverize me. There's more where that came from, punk, she'd mumble in my ear. The only thing I really excelled at was canoeing, and that wasn't the kind of heroic skill people expected to see from the kid who had beaten the Minotaur. I knew senior campers and counselors were watching me, trying to decide who my dad was, but they weren't having an easy time of it. I wasn't as strong as the Ares kids, or as good at archery as the Apollo kids. I didn't have Hephaestus' skill with metalwork, or, God forbid, Dionysus' way with the vine plants. Luke told me I might be a child of Hermes, a kind of jack-of-all-trades, master of none. But I got the feeling he was just trying to make me feel better. He really didn't know what to make of me either. Despite all that, I liked camp. I got used to the morning fog over the beach, the smell of hot strawberry fields in the afternoon, and even the wild noises of monsters in the woods at night. I would eat dinner with Cabin 11, scrape part of my meal into the fire, and try to feel some connection with my real dad. Nothing came. Just that warm feeling I'd always had, like the memory of his smile. I tried not to think too much about my mom, but I kept wondering, if gods and monsters were real, if all this magical stuff was possible, surely there was some way to save her, to bring her back. I started to understand Luke's bitterness and how he seemed to resent his father, Hermes. Okay, so maybe gods had important things to do, but couldn't they call once in a while, or thunder or something? Dionysus could make Diet Coke appear out of thin air. Wouldn't my dad, whoever he was, make a phone appear? Thursday afternoon, 3 days after I'd arrived at Camp HalfBlood, I had my first sword fighting lesson. Everybody from Cabin 11 gathered in the big circular area where Luke would be our instructor. We started with basic stabbing and slashing using some straw-stuffed dummies in Greek armor. I guess I did okay. At least I understood what I was supposed to do, and my reflexes were good. The problem was, I couldn't find a blade that felt right in my hands. Either they were too heavy, or too light, or too long. Luke tried his best to fix me up, but he agreed that none of the practice blades seemed to work for me. We moved on to dueling in pairs. Luke announced he would be my partner since this was my first time. Good luck, one of the campers told me. Luke's the best swordsman in the last 300 years. Maybe he'll go easy on me, I said. The camper snorted. Luke showed me thrusts and parries and shield blocks the hard way. With every swipe, I got a little more battered and bruised. Keep your guard up, Percy, he'd say, and then whap me in the ribs with the flat of his blade. No, not that far up. Whap. Lunge. Whap. Now back. Whap. By the time he called a break, I was soaked in sweat. Everybody swarmed the drinks cooler. Luke poured ice water on his head, which looked like such a good idea. I did the same. Instantly, I felt better. Strength surged back into my arms. The sword didn't feel so awkward. Okay, everybody, circle up. If Percy doesn't mind, I want to give you a little demo. Great, I thought. Let's all watch Percy get pounded. The Hermes guys gathered around. They were suppressing smiles. I figured they'd been in my shoes before and couldn't wait to see how Luke used me for a punching bag. He told everybody he was going to demonstrate a disarming technique, how to twist the enemy's blade with the flat of your sword so that he had no choice but to drop his weapon. This is difficult, he stressed. I've had it used against me. No laughing at Percy now. Most swordsmen have to work years to master this technique. He demonstrated the move on me in slow motion. Sure enough, the sword clattered out of my hand. Now in real time, he said, after I'd retrieved my weapon. We keep sparring until one of us pulls it off. Ready, Percy? I nodded, and Luke came after me. Somehow, I kept him from getting a shot at the hilt of my sword. My senses opened up. I saw his attacks coming. I countered, I stepped forward, and tried a thrust of my own. Luke deflected it easily, but I saw a change in his face. His eyes narrowed, and he started to press me with more force. The sword grew heavy in my hand. The balance wasn't right. I knew it was only a matter of seconds before Luke took me down, so I figured, what the heck? I tried the disarming maneuver. My blade hit the base of Luke's, and I twisted, putting my whole weight into a downward thrust. Clang! Luke's sword rattled against the stones. The tip of my blade was an inch from his undefended chest. The other campers were silent. I lowered my sword. Sorry. For a moment, Luke was too stunned to speak. Sorry? His scarred face broke into a grin. By the gods, Percy, why are you sorry? Show me that again. I didn't want to. The short burst of manic energy had completely abandoned me. But Luke insisted. This time there was no contest. The moment our swords connected, Luke hit my hilt and sent my weapon skidding across the floor. After a long pause, somebody in the audience said, "Beginner's luck?" Luke wiped the sweat off his brow. He appraised me with an entirely new interest. "Maybe," he said, "but I wonder what Percy could do with a balanced sword." Maybe he doesn't need a sword at all. I bet I know what he needs. Ha ha ha. Sorry, I need to grab my water. My throat's feeling a little dry. Friday afternoon, I was sitting with Grover at the lake, resting from a near-death experience on the climbing wall. Grover had scampered up the top like a mountain goat, but the lava had almost gotten me. My shirt had smoking holes in it. The hairs had been singed off my forearms. Pardon me. We sat on the pier, watching the naiads do whatever underwater basket weaving, until I got up the nerve to ask Grover how his conversation had gone with Mr. D. His face turned a sickly shade of yellow. "Fine," he said. "Just great." "So your career still on track?" He glanced at me nervously. Kyron told you I want a searcher's license?" "Well, no." I had no idea what a searcher's license was, but it didn't seem like the right time to ask. "He just said you had big plans, that you needed credit for completing a keeper's assignment. So did you get it?" Grover looked down at the naiads. Mr. D suspended judgment. He said I hadn't failed or succeeded with you yet, so our fates were still tied together. If you got a quest and I went along to protect you and we both came back alive, then maybe he'd consider the job complete. My spirits lifted. "Well, that's not so bad, right?" "Bah. He might as well have transferred me to stable cleaning duty. The chances of you getting a quest. Even if you did, why would you want me along?" "Of course I'd want you along." Grover stared glumly into the water. "Basket weaving. Must be nice to have a useful skill." I tried to reassure him that he had lots of talents, but that just made him look more miserable. We talked about canoeing and swordplay for a while, then debated the pros and cons of the different gods. Finally, I asked him about the 4 empty cabins. Number 8, the silver one, belongs to Artemis, he said. She vowed to be maiden forever, so of course, no kids. The cabin is, honorary. If she didn't have one, she'd be mad. Yeah, she would be. Yeah, okay. But the other 3, the ones at the end, are those the big 3? I'm getting a buzz, sorry. I don't need to worry about it. Cool. That was unprofessional. Grover tensed. We were getting close to a touchy subject. No. One of them, number 2, is Hera's. That's another honorary thing. She's the goddess of marriage, so of course she wouldn't go around having affairs with mortals. That's her husband's job. When we say the big 3, we mean the 3 powerful brothers, the son of Kronos. Zeus, Poseidon, Hades. Right. You know, after the battle with the Titans, they took over the world from their dad and drew lots to decide who got what. Zeus got the sky, I remembered. Poseidon got the sea, Hades the underworld. Uh-huh. But Hades doesn't have a cabin here. No, he doesn't have a throne on Olympus either. He sort of does his own thing down in the underworld. If he did have a cabin here... Grover shuddered. Well, it wouldn't be pleasant. Leave it at that. But Zeus and Poseidon, they both had like a bazillion kids in the myths. Why are their cabins empty? Grover shifted his hooves uncomfortably. About 60 years ago, after World War II, the big 3 agreed they wouldn't sire any more heroes. Their children were just too powerful. They were affecting the course of human events too much, causing too much carnage. World War II, that was basically a fight between the sons of Zeus and Poseidon on one side and the sons of Hades on the other. The winning side, Zeus and Poseidon, made Hades swear an oath with them. No more affairs with mortal women. They all swore on the river Styx. Thunder boomed. I said, that's the most serious oath you can make. Grover nodded. And the brothers kept their word. No kids. Grover's face darkened. 17 years ago, Zeus fell off the wagon. There was this TV starlet with a big, fluffy 80s hairdo. He just couldn't help himself. When their child was born, a little girl named Thalia, well, the river Styx is serious about promises. Zeus himself got off easy because he's an immortal, but he brought a terrible fate on his daughter. But that isn't fair. It wasn't the little girl's fault. Grover hesitated. Percy, children of the big 3 have powers greater than the other half-bloods. They have a strong aura, a scent that attracts monsters. When Hades found out about the girl, he wasn't too happy about Zeus breaking his oath. Hades let the worst monsters out of Tartarus to torment Thalia. A satyr was assigned to be her keeper when she was 12, but there was nothing he could do. He tried to escort her here with a couple of other half-bloods she'd befriended. They almost made it. They got all the way to the top of that hill. He pointed across the valley to the pine tree where I'd fought the Minotaur. All 3 kindly ones were after them, along with a horde of hellhounds. They were about to be overrun when Thalia told her satyr to take the other 2 half-bloods to safety while she held off the monsters. She was wounded and tired, and she didn't want to live like a hunted animal. The satyr didn't want to leave her, but he couldn't change her mind, and he had to protect the others. So Thalia made her final stand alone, at the top of that hill. As she died, Zeus took pity on her. He turned her into that pine tree. Her spirit still helps protect the borders of the valley. That's why the hill is called Half-Blood Hill. I stared at the pine in the distance. The story made me feel hollow and guilty too. A girl my age had sacrificed herself to save her friends. She had faced a whole army of monsters. Next to that, my victory over the Minotaur didn't seem like much. I wondered, if I'd acted differently, could I have saved my mother? Grover, I said, have heroes really gone on quest to the underworld? Sometimes, he said. Orpheus, Hercules, Houdini. Cool. And have they ever returned somebody from the dead? No, never. Orpheus came close. Percy, you're not seriously thinking. No, I lied. I was just wondering. So, a satyr is always assigned to guard a demigod. Grover studied me warily. I hadn't persuaded him that I'd really drop the underworld idea. Not always. We go undercover to a lot of schools. We try to sniff out the half-bloods who have the makings of great heroes. If we find one with a very strong aura, like a child of the Big Three, we alert Chiron. He tries to keep an eye on them, since they could cause really huge problems. And you found me. Chiron said you thought I might be something special? Grover looked as if I'd just led him into a trap. I didn't... Oh, listen, don't think like that. If you were, you'd never, ever be allowed a quest, and I'd never get my license. You're probably a child of Hermes, or maybe even one of the minor gods, like Nemesis, the god of revenge. Don't worry, okay? I got the idea he was reassuring himself more than me. That night after dinner, there was a lot more excitement than usual. At last, it was time for Capture the Flag. When the plates were cleared away, the conch horn sounded, and we all stood at our tables. Campers yelled and cheered as Annabeth and two of her siblings ran into the pavilion carrying a silk banner. It was about 10 feet long, glistening gray, with a painting of a barn owl above an olive tree. From the opposite side of the pavilion, Clarice and her buddies ran in with another banner of an identical size, but gaudy red, painted with a bloody spear and a boar's head. I turned to Luke and yelled over the noise. Those are the flags? Yeah. Ares and Athena always lead the teams? Not always, he said, but often. So if another cabin captures one, what do? Repaint the flag? He grinned. You'll see. First we have to get one. Whose side are we on? He gave me a sly look, as if he knew something I didn't. The scar on his face made him look almost evil in the torchlight. We've made a temporary alliance with Athena. Tonight, we get the flag from Ares, and you are going to help. The teams were announced. Athena had made an alliance with Apollo and Hermes, the two biggest cabins. Apparently, privileges had been traded. Shower times, chore schedules, the best slots for activities in order to win support. Ares has allied themselves with everybody else. Dionysus, Demeter, Aphrodite, and Hephaestus. Aw, it's nice to see Ares, Aphrodite, and Hephaestus all working together. That pleases me greatly. From what I'd seen, Dionysus's kids were actually good athletes, but there were only 2 of them. Demeter's kids had the edge with nature skills and outdoor stuff, but they weren't very aggressive. Aphrodite's sons and daughters I wasn't too worried about. They mostly sat out every activity and checked their reflections in the lake, did their hair, and gossiped. Hephaestus's kids weren't pretty, and there were only 4 of them, but they were big and burly from working in the metal shop all day. That might be a problem. That, of course, left Ares's cabin. A dozen of the biggest, ugliest, meanest kids on Long Island or anywhere else on the planet. Chiron hammered his hoof on the marble. Heroes, he announced. You know the rules. The creek is the boundary line. The entire forest is fair game. All magic items are allowed. The banner must be prominently displayed and have no more than 2 guards. Prisoners may be disarmed, but may not be bound or gagged. No killing or maiming is allowed. I will serve as referee and battlefield medic. Arm yourselves. He spread his hands, and the tables were suddenly covered with equipment. Helmets, bronze swords, spears, oxide shields coated in metal. Whoa, I said. We're really supposed to use these? Luke looked at me as if I were crazy. Unless you want to get skewered by your friends in cabin 5. Here, Chiron thought these would fit. You'll be on border patrol. My shield was the size of an NBA backboard, with a big caduceus in the middle. It weighed about 1,000,000 pounds. I could have snowboarded on it fine, but I hoped nobody seriously expected me to run fast. My helmet, like all helmets on Athena's side, had a blue horsehair plume on top. Ares and their allies had red plumes. Annabeth yelled, "Blue team forward!" We cheered and shook our swords and followed her down the path to the south woods. The red team yelled taunts at us as they headed off towards the north. I managed to catch up with Annabeth without tripping over my equipment. Hey, she kept marching. So what's the plan? I asked. Got any magic items you can loan me? Her hand drifted towards her pocket as if she were afraid I'd stolen something. Just watch Clarissa's spear, she said. You don't want that thing touching you. Otherwise, don't worry. We'll take the banner from Ares. Has Luke given you your job? Border Patrol. Whatever that means. It's easy. Stand by the creek, keep the Reds away. Leave the rest to me. Athena always has a plan. She pushed ahead, leaving me in the dust. Okay, I mumbled. Glad you wanted me on your team. They're keeping him by the stream for a reason, I bet. It was a warm, sticky night. The woods were dark, with fireflies popping in and out of the view. Annabeth stationed me next to a little creek that gurgled over some rocks. Then she and the rest of the team scattered into the trees. Standing there, alone, with my big blue feathered helmet and my huge shield, I felt like an idiot. The bronze sword, like all the swords I'd tried so far, seemed balanced wrong. The leather grip pulled on my hand like a bowling ball. There was no way anybody would actually attack me, would they? I mean, Olympus had to have liability issues, right? Far away, the conch horn blew. I heard whoops and yells in the woods, the clanking of metal, kids fighting. A blue-plumed ally from Apollo raced past me like a deer, leaped through the creek, and disappeared into enemy territory. Great, I thought. I'll miss all the fun, as usual. Then I heard a sound that sent a chill up my spine, a low canine growl somewhere close by. I raised my shield instinctively. I had the feeling something was stalking me. Then the growling stopped. I felt the presence retreating. On the other side of the creek, the underbrush exploded. 5 Ares warriors came yelling and screaming out of the dark. Cream the punk, Clarice screamed. Her ugly pig eyes glared through the slits of her helmet. She brandished a 5-foot-long spear, its barbed metal tip flickering with red light. Her siblings had only the standard-issue bronze swords. Not that that made me feel any better. They charged across the stream. There was no help in sight. I could run, or I could defend myself against half the Ares cabin. I managed to sidestep the first kid's swing, but these guys were not as stupid as the Minotaur. They surrounded me, and Clarice thrust at me with her spear. My shield deflected the point, but I felt a painful tingling all over my body. My hair stood on end. My shield arm went numb, and the air burned. Electricity. Her stupid spear was electric. I fell back. Another Ares guy slammed me in the chest with the butt of his sword, and I hit the dirt. They could have kicked me into jelly, but they were too busy laughing. Give him a haircut, Clarice said. Grab his hair. I managed to get to my feet. I raised my sword, but Clarice slammed it aside with her spear as sparks flew. Now both my arms felt numb. Oh, wow, Clarice said. I'm really scared of this guy. Really scared. The flag is that way, I told her. I wanted to sound angry, but I was afraid it didn't come out that way. Yeah, one of our siblings said. But see, we don't care about the flag. We care about a guy who made our cabin look stupid. You do that without my help, I told him. It probably wasn't the smartest thing to say. 2 of them came at me. I backed up toward the creek, tried to raise my shield, but Clarice was too fast. Her spear struck me straight in the ribs. If I had been wearing an armored breastplate, I would have been shish kebabbed. As it was, the electric point just about shocked my teeth out of my mouth. One of our cabin mates slashed his sword across my arm, leaving a good-sized cut. Seeing my own blood made me dizzy, warm and cold at the same time. No maiming, I managed to say. Oops, the guy said. Guess I lost my dessert privilege. He pushed me into the creek, and I landed with a splash. They all laughed. I figured as soon as they were through being amused, I would die. But then something happened. The water seemed to wake up my senses, as if I just had a bag of my mom's double espresso jelly beans. Clarice and our cabin mates came into the creek to get me, but I stood to meet them. I knew what to do. I swung the flat of my sword against the first guy's head and knocked his helmet clean off. I hit him so hard I could see his eyes vibrating as he crumpled into the water. Ugly number 2 and ugly number 3 came at me. I slammed one in the face with my shield and used my sword to shear off the other guy's horsehair plume. Both of them backed up quick. Ugly number 4 didn't look really anxious to attack, but Clarice kept coming, the point of her spear crackling with energy. As soon as she thrust, I caught the shaft between the edge of my shield and my sword. I snapped it like a twig. She screamed, "You idiot! You corpse-breath worm!" She probably would have said worse, but I smacked her between the eyes with my sword butt and sent her stumbling backward out of the creek. Then I heard yelling, elated screams, and I saw Luke racing toward the boundary line with the team's red banner lifted high. He was flanked by a couple of Hermes guys covering his retreat, and a few Apollos behind them, fighting off the Hephaestus kids. The Ares folks got up, and Clarice muttered a dazed curse. "A trick!" she shouted. "It was a trick!" They staggered after Luke, but it was too late. Everybody converged on the creek as Luke ran across into friendly territory. Our side exploded into cheers. The red banner shimmered and turned to silver. The boar and spear were replaced with a huge caduceus, the symbol of Cabin 11. Everybody on the blue team picked up Luke and started carrying him around on their shoulders. Chiron cantered out from the woods and blew the conch horn. The game was over. We'd won. I was about to join the celebration when Annabeth's voice, right next to me in the creek, said, "Not bad, hero." I looked, but she wasn't there. Where the heck did you learn to fight like that?" she asked. The air shimmered, and she materialized, holding a Yankees baseball cap as if she'd just taken it off her head. I felt myself getting angry. I wasn't even fazed by the fact that she'd just been invisible. "You set me up," I said. "You put me here because you knew Clarice would come after me while you sent Luke around the flank. You had it all figured out." Annabeth shrugged. "I told you, Athena always has a plan. A plan to get me pulverized. I came as fast as I could. I was about to jump in, but..." She shrugged. "You didn't need help." Then she noticed my wounded arm. "How did you do that?" "Sword cut," I said. "What do you think?" "No, it was a sword cut. Look at it." The blood was gone. Where the huge cut had been, there was a long white scratch, and even that was fading. As I watched, it turned into a small scar and disappeared. "I don't get it," I said. Annabeth was thinking hard. I could almost see the gears turning. She looked down at my feet, then at Clarice's broken spear, and said, "Step out of the water, Percy." "What?" "Just do it." I came out of the creek and immediately felt bone tired. My arms started to go numb again. My adrenaline rush left me. I almost felt over. But Annabeth steadied me. "Oh, sticks," she cursed. "This is not good. I assumed it would be Zeus." Before I could ask what she meant, I heard that canine growl again, but much closer than before. A howl ripped through the forest. The campers' cheering died instantly. Chiron shouted something in ancient Greek, which I would realize only later I had understood perfectly. "Stand ready, my bow!" Annabeth drew her sword. There on the rocks above us was a black hound the size of a rhino, with lava-red eyes and fangs like daggers. It was looking straight at me. Nobody moved except Annabeth, who yelled, "Percy, run!" She tried to step in front of me, but the hound was too fast. It leaped over her, an enormous shadow with teeth, and just as it hit me, as I stumbled backwards and felt its razor-sharp claws ripping through my armor, there was a cascade of thwacking sounds, like 40 pieces of paper being ripped one after the other. From the hellhound's neck sprouted a cluster of arrows. The monster fell dead at my feet. By some miracle, I was still alive. I didn't want to look underneath the ruins of my shredded armor. My chest felt warm and wet, and I knew I was badly cut. Another second and the monster would have turned me into 100 pounds of delicatessen meat. Chiron trotted up next to us, a bow in his hand, his face grim. "Dia mortalis," Annabeth said. "That's a hellhound from the fields of punishment. They're not supposed to." "Someone summoned it," Chiron said. "Someone inside the camp." Luke came over, the banner in his hand, his moment of glory gone. Clarice yelled, "It's all Percy's fault! Percy summoned it!" "Be quiet, child," Chiron told her. We watched the body of the hellhound melt into the shadow, soaking into the ground until it disappeared. "You're wounded," Annabeth told me. "Quick, Percy, get in the water." "I'm okay." "No, you're not," she said. "Chiron, watch this." I was too tired to argue. I stepped back into the creek, the whole camp gathering around me. Instantly, I felt better. I could feel the cuts on my chest closing up. Some of the campers gasped. "Look, I don't know why," I said, trying to apologize. I'm sorry. But they weren't watching my wounds heal. They were staring at something above my head. "Percy," Annabeth said, pointing. By the time I looked up, the sign was already fading.
but I could still make out the hologram of green light spinning and gleaming, a 3-tipped spear, a trident.
Your father, Annabeth murmured. This is really not good.
It is determined, Chiron announced. All around me, campers started kneeling. Even the Ares cabin, though they didn't look happy about it.
My father? I asked, completely bewildered.
Poseidon, said Chiron. Earthshaker, Stormbringer, father of horses. Hail Perseus Jackson, son of the sea god.
End of the chapter. Woo! Boy, they come at you hard and fast, don't they? That was an intense one. And I was so right. Athena knew what's up. She and Poseidon are bros. Rivals, but they're bros. Chapter 9. I am offered a quest. The next morning, Chiron moved me to cabin 3. I didn't have to share with anybody. I had plenty of room all for my stuff. The Minotaur's horn, 1 set of spare clothes, and a toiletry bag. I got to sit at my own dinner table, pick all my own activities, call lights out whenever I felt like it, and not listen to anybody else. And I was absolutely miserable. Just when I'd started to feel accepted, to feel I'd had a home in cabin 11, that I might be a normal kid, or at least as normal as you can be when you're half-blood, I'd been separated out as if I'd had some rare disease. Nobody mentioned the Hellhound, but I got the feeling they were all talking about it behind my back. The attack had scared everybody. It sent 2 messages. 1, that I was the son of the sea god, and 2, monsters would stop at nothing to kill me. They could even invade a camp that had always been considered safe. The other campers steered clear of me as much as possible. Cabin 11 was too nervous to have sword class with me after what I'd done to the Ares folks in the woods, so my lessons with Luke became one-on-one. He pushed me harder than ever and wasn't afraid to bruise me up in the process. You're going to need all the training you can get, he promised, as we were working with swords and flaming torches. Now let's try that viper beheading strike again. 50 more repetitions. Annabeth still taught me Greek in the mornings, but she seemed distracted. Every time I said something, she scowled at me, as if I just poked her between the eyes. After lesson, she walked away muttering to herself, Quest? Poseidon? Dirty rotten? Gotta make a plan. Even Clarice kept her distance, though her venomous looks made it clear she wanted to kill me for breaking her magic spear. I wish she would just yell or punch me or something. I'd rather get into fights every day than be ignored. I knew somebody at camp resented me because one night I came into my cabin and found a mortal newspaper dropped inside the doorway, a copy of the New York Daily News, opening to the Metro page. The article took me almost an hour to read because the angrier I got, the more words floated around on the page. Boy and mother still missing after freak car accident, by Eileen Smythe. Sally Jackson and son Percy are still missing 1 week after their mysterious disappearance. The family's badly burned 78 Camaro was discovered last Saturday on a North Long Island road with the roof ripped off and the front axle broken. The car had flipped and skidded for several hundred feet before exploding. Mother and son had gone for a weekend vacation to Montauk, but left hastily under mysterious circumstances. Small traces of blood were found in the car and near the scene of the wreck, but there were no other signs of the missing Jacksons. Residents in the rural area reported seeing nothing unusual around the time of the accident. Miss Jackson's husband, Gabe Ugliano, claims that his stepson, Percy Jackson, is a troubled child who has been kicked out of numerous boarding schools and has expressed violent tendencies in the past. Police would not say whether son Percy is a suspect in his mother's disappearance, but they have not ruled out foul play. Below are recent pictures of Sally Jackson and Percy. Police urge anyone with information to call the following toll-free Crime Stoppers hotline. The phone number was circled in black marker.
I wadded up the paper and threw it away, then flopped down in my bunk bed in the middle of my empty cabin. Lights out, I told myself, miserably. That night, I had my worst dream yet. I was running along the beach in a storm. This time there was a city behind me. Not New York. The sprawl was different. Buildings spread farther apart, palm trees low, and hills in the distance. About 100 yards down the surf, 2 men were fighting. They looked like TV wrestlers, muscular, with beards and long hair. Both wore flowing gray tunics, one trimmed in blue, the other in green. They grappled with each other, wrestled, kicked, and headbutted, and every time they connected, lightning flashed, the sky grew darker, and the wind rose. I had to stop them. I didn't know why, but the harder I ran, the more the wind blew me back, until I was running in place, my heels digging uselessly in the sand. Over the roar of the storm, I could hear the blue-robed one yelling at the green-robed one. "Give it back! Give it back!" Like a kindergartner fighting over a toy. The waves got bigger, crashing into the beach, spraying me with salt. I yelled, "Stop it! Stop fighting!" The ground shook. Laughter came from somewhere under the earth, and a voice so deep and evil it turned my blood to ice. "Come down, little hero," the voice crooned. "Come down." The sand split beneath me, opening up a crevice straight down to the center of the earth. My feet slipped and darkness swallowed me. I woke up sure I was falling. I was still in bed, cabin 3. My body told me it was morning, but it was dark outside, and thunder rolled across the hills. A storm was brewing. I hadn't dreamed that. I heard a clopping sound at the door, a hoof knocking on the threshold. "Come in?" Grover trotted inside, looking worried. "Mr. D wants to see you." "Why?" "He wants you to kill... I'd better let him tell you." Nervously, I got dressed and followed, sure that I was in huge trouble. For days, I'd half been expecting the summons to the big house. Now that I was declared a son of Poseidon, one of the big 3 gods who weren't supposed to have kids, I figured it was a crime for me just to be alive. The other gods had probably been debating the best way to punish me for existing, and now Mr. D was ready to deliver the verdict. Over Long Island Sound, the sky looked like ink soup coming to a boil. A hazy curtain of rain was coming in our direction. I asked Grover if we needed an umbrella. "No," he said. "It never rains here unless we want it to." I pointed at the storm. "What the heck is that, then?" He glanced uneasily at the sky. "It'll pass around us. Bad weather always does." I realized he was right. In the week I'd been here, it had never even been overcast. The few rain clouds I'd seen had skirted right around the edges of the valley. But this storm? This one was huge. At the volleyball pit, the kids from Apollo's cabin were playing a morning game against the satyrs. Dionysus's twins were walking around in the strawberry fields, making the plants grow. Everybody was going about their normal business, but they looked tense. They kept their eyes on the storm. Grover and I walked up to the front porch of the big house. Dionysus sat at the... Oh, what the heck is this pinnacle? Pinnacle? Sure. Dionysus sat at the pinnacle table in his tiger-striped Hawaiian shirt with his Diet Coke, just as he had on my first day. He sat across the table in his fake wheelchair. They were playing against invisible opponents, 2 sets of cards hovering in the air. "Well, well," Mr. D said without looking up. "Our little celebrity." I waited. "Come closer," Mr. D said, "and don't expect me to kowtow to you, mortal, just because old Barnaclebeard is your father." A net of lightning flashed across the clouds. Thunder shook the windows of the house. "Blah, blah, blah," Dionysus said. Good for you, Dionysus. Chiron feigned interest in his pinnacle cards. Grover cowered by the railing, his hooves clopping back and forth. "If I had my way," Dionysus said, "I would cause your molecules to erupt in flames. We'd sweep up the ashes and be done with a lot of trouble, but Chiron seems to feel this would be against my mission at this cursed camp to keep you little brats safe from harm. Spontaneous combustion is a form of harm, Mr. D, Chiron put in. Nonsense, Dionysus said. Boy wouldn't feel a thing. Nevertheless, I've agreed to restrain myself. I'm thinking of turning you into a dolphin instead, sending you back to your father. Mr. D, Chiron warned. Oh, all right, Dionysus relented. There's one more option, but it's deadly foolishness. Dionysus rose, and the invisible player's cards dropped to the table. I'm off to Olympus for the emergency meeting. If the boy is still here when I get back, I'll turn him into an Atlantic bottlenose. Do you understand? And Perseus Jackson, if you're at all smart, you'll see there's a much more sensible choice than what Chiron feels you must do. Dionysus picked up a playing card, twisted it, and it became a plastic rectangle. A credit card? No, a security pass. He snapped his fingers. The air seemed to fold and bend around him. He became a hologram, then a wind, then he was gone, leaving only the smell of fresh-pressed grapes lingering behind. Chiron smiled at me, but he looked tired and strained. Sit, Percy, please, and Grover. We did.
Hello, Aaron. Sorry, I just noticed the chat. Chiron laid his cards on the table, a winning hand he hadn't gotten to use. Tell me, Percy, he said, what did you make of the Hellhound? Just hearing the name made me shudder. Chiron probably wanted me to say, heck, it was nothing, I can eat hellhounds for breakfast. But I didn't feel like lying. It scared me, I said. If you hadn't shot it, I'd be dead. You'll meet worse, Percy. Far worse before you're done. Done? With what? Your quest, of course. Will you accept it? I glanced at Grover, who was crossing his fingers. Sir, I said, you haven't told me what it is yet. Chiron grimaced. Well, that's the hard part. The details. Thunder rumbled across the valley. The storm clouds had now reached the edge of the beach. As far as I could see, the sky and the sea were boiling together. Poseidon and Zeus, I said. They're fighting over something valuable. Something that was stolen, aren't they? Chiron and Grover exchanged looks. Chiron sat forward in his wheelchair. How did you know? My face felt hot. I wish I hadn't opened my big mouth. The weather since Christmas has been weird, like the sea and the sky are fighting. Then I talked to Annabeth, and she'd overheard something about a theft, and I've also been having these dreams. I knew it, Grover said. Hush, Satyr, Chiron ordered. But it is his quest. Grover's eyes were bright with excitement. It must be. Only the Oracle can determine. Chiron stroked his bristly beard. Nevertheless, Percy, you are correct. Your father and Zeus are having their worst quarrel in centuries. They are fighting over something valuable that was stolen. To be precise, a lightning bolt. I laughed nervously. A what? Do not take this lightly, Chiron warned. I'm not talking about some tinfoil-covered zigzag you see in a second-grade play. I'm talking about a 2-foot-long cylinder of high-grade celestial blondes, capped on both ends with god-level explosives. Oh. Zeus's master bolt, Chiron said, getting worked up now. The symbol of his power, from which all other lightning bolts are patterned. The first weapon made by the Cyclops for the war against the Titans. The bolt that sheared the top off Mount Etna and hurled Kronos from his throne. The Master Bolt, which packs enough power to make mortal hydrogen bombs look like firecrackers. And it's missing. Stolen, Chiron said. By who? By who? Chiron corrected. Once a teacher, always a teacher. By you. My mouth fell open. At least, Chiron held up a hand, that's what Zeus thinks. During the winter solstice, at the last council of the gods, Zeus and Poseidon had an argument.
The usual nonsense. Mother Rhea always liked you best. Air disasters are more spectacular than sea disasters, etc., etc. Afterwards, Zeus realized his master bolt was missing, taken from his throne room, under his very nose. He immediately blamed Poseidon. Now, a god cannot usurp another god's symbol of power directly. That is forbidden by most ancient of divine laws. But Zeus believes your father convinced a human hero to take it. But I didn't. Patience and listen, child, Chiron said. Zeus has good reason to be suspicious. The forges of the Cyclops are under the ocean, which gives Poseidon some influence over the makers of his brother's lightning. Zeus believes Poseidon has taken the master bolt and is now secretly having the Cyclops build an arsenal of illegal copies, which might be used to topple Zeus from his throne. The only thing Zeus wasn't sure about was which hero Poseidon used to steal the bolt. Now Poseidon has openly claimed you as his son. You were in New York over the winter holiday. You could have easily snuck into Olympus. Zeus believes he has found his thief. But I've never even been to Olympus. Zeus is crazy! Chiron and Grover glanced nervously at the sky. The clouds didn't seem to be parting around us, as Grover had promised. They were rolling straight over our valley, sealing us in like a coffin lid. Percy, Grover said, we don't use the C word to describe the Lord of the Sky. Perhaps paranoid? Chiron suggested. Then again, Poseidon has tried to unseat Zeus before. I believe that was question 38 on your final exam. He looked at me as if he actually expected me to remember question 38. How could anyone accuse me of stealing a god's weapon? I couldn't even steal a slice of pizza from Gabe's poker party without getting busted. Chiron was waiting for an answer. Something about a golden net, I guessed. Poseidon and Hera and a few other gods, they trapped Zeus and wouldn't let him out until he promised to be a better ruler, right? Correct, Chiron said. And Zeus has never trusted Poseidon since. Of course, Poseidon denies stealing the Master Bolt. He took great offense for the accusation. The two have been arguing back and forth for months, threatening war. And now you've come along, the proverbial last straw. But I'm just a kid. Percy, Grover cut in, if you were Zeus, and you already thought your brother was plotting to overthrow you, then your brother suddenly admitted that he had broken the sacred oath he took after World War II, that he's fathered a new mortal hero who might be used as a weapon against you. Wouldn't that put a twist in your toga? But I didn't do anything. Poseidon, my dad, he didn't really have this Master Bolt stolen, did he? Chiron sighed. Most thinking observers would agree that thievery is not Poseidon's style, but the sea god is too proud to try convincing Zeus of that. Zeus has demanded Poseidon return the bolt by the summer solstice. That's June 21st, 10 days from now. Poseidon wants an apology for being called a thief by the same date. I hoped that diplomacy might prevail, that Hera or Demeter or Hestia would make the true brothers see sense, but your arrival has inflamed Zeus's temper. Now neither god will back down, unless someone intervenes. Unless the Master Bolt is found and returned to Zeus before the solstice, there will be war. And do you know what a full-fledged war would look like, Percy? Bad, I guessed. Imagine the world in chaos. Nature at war with itself. Olympians forced to choose sides between Zeus and Poseidon. Destruction, carnage, millions dead. Western civilization turned into a battleground so big it will make the Trojan War look like a water balloon fight. Bad, I repeated. And you, Percy Jackson, would be the first to feel Zeus's wrath. It started to rain. Volleyball players stopped their game and stared in stunned silence at the sky. I had brought the storm to HalfBlood Hill. Zeus was punishing the whole camp because of me. I was furious. So I have to find the stupid bolt, I said, and return it to Zeus. What better peace offering, Chiron said, than to have the son of Poseidon return Zeus's property? If Poseidon doesn't have it, where is the thing? I believe I know. Chiron's expression was grim. Part of a prophecy I had years ago. Well, some of the lines make sense to me now. But before I can say more, you must officially take up the quest. You must seek the counsel of the Oracle. Why can't you tell me where the bolt is beforehand? Because if I did, you would be too afraid to accept the challenge. I swallowed. Good reason. You agree then? I looked at Grover, who nodded encouragingly. Easy for him. I was the one Zeus wanted to kill. All right, I said. It's better than being turned into a dolphin. Then it's time you consulted the oracle, Chiron said. Go upstairs, Percy, to the attic. When you come back down, assuming you're still sane, we will talk more. Oh my goodness. Let me read the chat since I'm at a thing. So much chatting happening. This is the most chatting that's ever happened. Thanks, Aaron. Let me take a drink of water. And I hope you can't hear my cat meowing desperately in the background. He wants to get into the bedroom door. 4 flights up, the stairs ended under a green trapdoor. I pulled the cord. The door swung down, and a wooden ladder clattered into place. The warm air from above smelled like mildew and rotten wood and something else. A smell I remembered from biology class. Reptiles. The smell of snakes. I held my breath and climbed. The attic was filled with Greek hero junk. Armor stands covered in cobwebs, once bright shields pitted with rust, old leather steamer trunks plastered with stickers saying Ithaca, Circe's Isle, and the land of the Amazons. One long table was stacked with glass jars filled with pickled things, severed hairy claws, huge yellow eyes, various other parts of monsters. A dusty mounted trophy on the wall looked like a giant snake's head, but with horns and a full set of shark's teeth. The plaque read Hydra Head No. 1, Woodstock, New York, 1969. Oh, that's cool. Aaron, by the window, sitting on a wooden tripod stool, was the most gruesome memento of all. A mummy. Not the wrapped in cloth kind, but a human, female body shriveled to a husk. She wore a tie-dyed sundress, lots of beaded necklaces, and a headband over long black hair. The skin of her face was thin and leathery over her skull, and her eyes were glassy white slits, as if the real eyes had been replaced by marbles. She'd been dead a long, long time. Looking at her sent chills up my back. And that was before she stood up on her stool and opened her mouth. A green mist poured from the mummy's mouth, coiling over the floor in thick tendrils, hissing like 20,000 snakes. I stumbled over myself, trying to get the trap door, but it slammed shut. Inside my head, I heard a voice slithering into one ear, coiling around my brain. I am the speaker of Delphi, speaker of the prophecies of Phoebus Apollo, slayer of the mighty Python. Approach, seeker, and ask. I wanted to say, no thanks, wrong door, just looking for the bathroom. But I forced myself to take a deep breath. The mummy wasn't alive. She was some kind of gruesome receptacle for something else, the power that was now swirling around me in the green mist. But its presence didn't feel evil, like my demonic math teacher, Mrs. Dodds, or the Minotaur. It felt more like the 3 fates I'd seen knitting the yarn outside the highway fruit stand. Ancient, powerful, and definitely not human. But not particularly interested in killing me either. I got up the courage to ask, what is my destiny? The mist swirled more thickly, collecting right in front of me around the table with the pickled monster part jars. Suddenly, there were 4 men sitting around the table playing cards. Their faces became clear. It was Smelly Gabe and his buddies. My fists clenched, though I knew this poker party couldn't be real. It was an illusion made out of mist. Gabe turned toward me and spoke in the rasping voice of the oracle. You shall go west and face the god who is turned. His buddy on the right looked up and said in the same voice, You shall find what was stolen and see it safely returned. The guy on the left threw in 2 poker chips, then said, You shall be betrayed by one who calls you a friend. Finally, Eddie, our building super, delivered the worst line of all. And you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. The figures began to dissolve. At first I was too stunned to say anything, but as the mist retreated, coiling into a huge green serpent and slithering back into the mouth of the mummy, I cried, "Wait, what do you mean? What friend? What will I fail to save?" The tail of the mist snake disappeared into the mummy's mouth. She reclined back against the wall, her mouth closed tight, as if it hadn't been opened in 100 years. The attic was silent again, abandoned. Nothing but a room full of mementos. I got the feeling that I could stand here until I had cobwebs too, and I wouldn't learn anything else. My audience with the oracle was over. Almost done, guys. Almost done. This is going to run a little long, sorry. I've been a little bit indulgent with my theatrics and my reading of things. Well, Chiron asked me. I slumped into a chair at the pinochle table. She said I would retrieve what was stolen. Grover sat forward, excitedly chewing on the remains of a Diet Coke can. That's great! What did the oracle say exactly? Chiron pressed. This is important. My ears were still tingling from the reptilian voice. She said I would go west and face a god who had turned. I would retrieve what was stolen and see it safely returned. I knew it, Grover said. Chiron didn't look satisfied. Anything else? I didn't want to tell him. What friend would betray me? I didn't have that many. And the last line, I would fail to save what mattered most. What kind of oracle would send me on a quest and tell me, oh, by the way, you'll fail? How did I confess that? No, I said. That's about it. He studied my face. Very well, Percy. But know this, the oracle's words often have double meanings. Don't dwell on them too much. The truth is not always clear until events come to pass. I got the feeling he knew I was holding back something bad, and he was trying to make me feel better. Okay, I said, anxious to change topics. So where do we go? Who's this god in the west? Ah, think, Percy. If Zeus and Poseidon weaken each other in a war, who stands to gain? Somebody else who wants to take over, I guessed. Yes, quite. Someone who harbors a grudge, who has been unhappy with his lot since the world was divided eons ago, whose kingdom would grow powerful with the deaths of millions. Someone who hates his brothers for forcing him into an oath to have no more children, an oath that both of them now have broken. I thought about my dreams, the evil voice that had spoken from underground. Hades. Chiron nodded. The Lord of the Dead is the only possibility. A scrap of aluminum dribbled out of Grover's mouth. Whoa, wait, what? A Fury came after Percy, Chiron reminded him. She watched the young man until she was sure of his identity, then tried to kill him. Furies only obey one lord, Hades. Yes, but Hades hates all heroes, Grover protested, especially if he has found out Percy is the son of Poseidon. A hellhound got into the forest, Chiron. Those can only be summoned from the fields of punishment, and it had to be summoned by someone within camp. Hades must have a spy here. He must suspect Poseidon will try to use Percy to clear his name. Hades would very much like to kill this young half-blood before he can take on the quest. Great, I muttered. That's two major gods who want to kill me. But a quest to... I mean, couldn't the Master Bolt be in some place like Maine? Maine's very nice this time of year. Hades sent a minion to steal the Master Bolt, Chiron insisted. He hid it in the underworld, knowing full well that Zeus would blame Poseidon. I don't pretend to understand the Lord of the Dead's motives perfectly, or why he chose this time to start a war, but one thing is certain. Percy must go to the underworld, find the Master Bolt, and reveal the truth. A strange fire burned in my stomach. The weirdest thing was, it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. The desire for revenge. Hades had tried to kill me 3 times so far, with the Fury, the Minotaur, and the Hellhound. It was his fault my mother had disappeared in a flash of light. Now he was trying to frame me and my dad for a theft we hadn't committed. I was ready to take him on. Besides, if my mother was in the underworld... Whoa, boy, said the small part of my brain that was still sane. You're a kid. Hades is a god. Grover was trembling. He'd started eating pinochle cards like potato chips. The poor guy needed to complete a quest with me so he could get his searcher's license, whatever that was. But how could I ask him to do this quest, especially when the Oracle said I was destined to fail? This was suicide. Look, if we know it's Hades, I told Chiron, why can't we just tell the other gods? Zeus or Poseidon could go down to the underworld and bust some heads. Suspecting and knowing are not the same, Chiron said. Besides, even if the other gods suspect Hades, and I imagine Poseidon does, they couldn't retrieve the bolt themselves. Gods cannot cross each other's territories except by invitation. That is another ancient rule. Heroes, on the other hand, have certain privileges. They can go anywhere, challenge anyone, as long as they're bold enough and strong enough to do it. No god can be held responsible for a hero's actions. Why do you think the gods always operate through humans? You're saying I'm being used. I'm saying it's no accident Poseidon has claimed you now. It's a very risky gamble, but he's in a desperate situation. He needs you. My dad needs me. Emotions rolled around inside me like bits of glass in a kaleidoscope. I didn't know whether to feel resentful or grateful or happy or angry. Poseidon had ignored me for 12 years. Now suddenly he needed me. I looked at Chiron. You've known I was Poseidon's son all along, haven't you? I had my suspicions. As I've said, I've spoken to the Oracle too. I got the feeling there was a lot he wasn't telling me about his prophecy, but I decided I couldn't worry about that right now. After all, I was holding back information too. So let me get this straight, I said. I'm supposed to go to the underworld and confront the Lord of the Dead. Check, Chiron said. Find the most powerful weapon in the universe. Check. And get it back to Olympus before the summer solstice in 10 days. That's about right. I looked at Grover, who gulped down the Ace of Hearts. Did I mention that Maine is very nice this time of year? He said weakly. You don't have to go, I told him. I can't ask that of you. Oh, he shifted his hooves. No, it's just that satyrs and underground places, well... He took a deep breath, then stood, brushing the shredded cards and aluminum bits off his t-shirt. You saved my life, Percy. If you're serious about wanting me along, I won't let you down. I felt so relieved I wanted to cry, though I didn't think that would be very heroic. It would, according to ancient Greek philosophies. Ancient Greek heroes were crying all the time, showing emotion is manly. Grover was the only friend I'd ever had for longer than a few months. I wasn't sure what good a satyr could do against the forces of the dead, but I felt better knowing he'd be with me. All the way, G-Man. I turned to Chiron. So where do we go? The Oracle just said to go west. The entrance to the underworld is always in the west. It moves from age to age, just like Olympus. Right now, of course, it's in America. Where? Chiron looked surprised. I thought that would be obvious enough. The entrance to the underworld is in Los Angeles. Oh, I said, naturally. So we just get on a plane. No, Grover shrieked. Percy, what are you thinking? Have you ever been on a plane in your life? I shook my head, feeling embarrassed. My mom had never taken me anywhere by plane. She'd always said we didn't have the money. Besides, her parents had died in a plane crash. Percy, think, Chiron said. You are the son of the sea god. Your father's bitterest rival is Zeus, lord of the sky. Your mother knew better than to trust you in an airplane. You would be in Zeus's domain. You would never come down alive. Overhead, lightning crackled. Thunder boomed. Okay, I said, determined not to look at the storm. So I travel overland. That's right, Chiron said. 2 companions may accompany you. Grover is one. The other has already volunteered if you will accept her help. Gee, I said, feigning surprise. Who else would be stupid enough to volunteer for a quest like this? The air shimmered behind Chiron. Annabeth became visible, stuffing her Yankees camp into her back pocket. I've been waiting for a long time for a quest, seaweed brain, she said. Athena is no fan of Poseidon, but if you're going to save the world, I'm the best person to keep you from messing up. If you do say so yourself, I said. I suppose you have a plan, wise girl? Her cheeks colored. Do you want my help or not? The truth was, I did. I needed all the help I could get. A trio, I said. That'll work. Excellent, Chiron said. This afternoon, we take you as far as the bus terminal in Manhattan. After that, you are on your own. Lightning flashed. Rain poured down on the meadows that were never supposed to have violent weather. No time to waste, Chiron said. I think you should all get packing. And that is the end of chapter 9. Thank you for staying with me for so long. I usually try to keep these only 40 minutes, but I talked for a while and I got really into some readings and read a lot of chat and good Lord. Oh, yay. I love to see the chat filled up. That makes me happy. It's nice to know my audience is talking to each other. So, as I said at the beginning of the stream, I will not be streaming Thursday or Sunday. I am taking a little trip. I apologize, but we will be back week after next. We're going on a little hiatus, which is actually a great time to go because it sounds like we've just finished the first part of the book. This has been an amazing journey. Thank you for joining me on it, and I will see you after next week. Love you all. Bye.